After recently joining Wikimedia Foundation, Grant Ingersoll, the foundation's CTO, is learning on the job each and every day. As the leader of a 120-person team, his opportunities to gain new knowledge from those around him are never ending. Grant shares what he has found out so far and how that has helped him grow into his role. Plus, he gives us some insights about what project he and his team are working on and why he has a deep love for data. Enjoy this episode. IT Visionaries is created by the team at mission.org and brought to you by the Salesforce Customer 360 platform, the #1 cloud platform for digital transformation of every experience. Build connected experience, empower every employee, and deliver continuous innovation with the customer at the center of everything you do. Learn more at salesforce.com/platform.
Welcome to another episode of IT Visionaries. I'm Ian Faison, Chief Content Officer here at mission.org. And we have on the other line, Grant, what's going on?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on. We are super excited to talk about Wikimedia. I think it's something we all know, but we get to dive under the hood a little bit, or peek under the hood maybe, perhaps. So we're going to get into that and all things your background. So first, how did you get started in technology in the first place?
Yeah, thanks. And again, happy to be here. That's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of people in technology, it started when I was a kid. I can remember the old days of my dad and my sister bringing home either a computer from work or from school. And I think many of us, my whole goal at the time was to play video games. And so I had to dig in and kind of figure out how the heck these things work so I could play the video games that I wanted. And then actually didn't really kick in until college. And I'm forever in debt to a good friend of mine who said to me, "Hey, Grant, I think you should take this computer programming class." Because I originally went to school thinking I was going to be either a mathematician or an economist, believe it or not. And he said, "Take this computer class." I did. I fell in love. And, here 20 some years later, still doing what I love.
That's remarkable. I love how video games were like an early building block for so many of the folks that we talk to on the show. Do you have a favorite game?
Well, back in the day, I mean, it was basically anything I could get to run. These days, Tetris is still a good old standby, and I'll probably forever be a civilization addict. But don't have as much time to play these days as I used to. That's for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense because you've been just a short amount of time in a new role as CTO of Wikimedia Foundation, and I'm so curious, what is the scope of your responsibilities there?
Yeah, that's right. I think I'm going on week 6, and so even knowing what the full scope is still something I'm uncovering. But with large swaths, ultimately Wikimedia as a foundation is supporting all of the various wiki projects out there that many of your listeners are familiar with. English Wikipedia probably being the most well-known and the one most people think of when they hear Wikipedia or Wikimedia. So my team, I run about a 120-person team, and we're really focused on a lot of the back-end infrastructure that goes into supporting both that end-user experience that I think all of us as users of Wikipedia experience, as well as plumbing to make that all run, right? So within my team, I have site reliability engineers, I have machine learning engineers, I have researchers, we have people who work on the core infrastructure of all of those moving parts that go into the foundation's website. I have technical evangelists who go out and show people how to take advantage of the open source that we publish. We have security teams, folks working on things like censorship and privacy and a whole host of other things. I'm probably not doing it even justice given the amount of things I've been amazed that this team takes on.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a massive part of society now, right? I mean, it's so funny to think of this amazing behemoth of crowdsourced thoughts. And I remember back in the day, when you weren't allowed to cite Wikipedia for anything because our teachers were like, it's all made up. And then now, flash forward to today, and it's, I feel like it's essential. Why were you so excited to join the team?
Yeah, well, I mean, in many ways, you hit the nail on the head there. It's essential to the infrastructure of the internet, and honestly, I wasn't even looking. I had started a company called LucidWorks, been there 12 years, and was happily cruising along. Albeit, the company's grown, and like I think many founders, you reach a point where you're like, okay, do I keep doing this thing, or should I look for something new? And oddly enough, just happened to be a recruiter who caught my attention in an email. And I almost hate to say that, right? Because I think we all get so many recruiting emails that we're sometimes tired of them. But I was like, yeah, I kind of have to take that one. And it started off at first with my background is in search and machine learning and natural language processing. And just, reflecting on where I was at in my career, I was like, I've spent this whole lifetime, at least the last 15 years, working on this problem of helping people better understand information. And so when Wikimedia showed up in my inbox, I was like, well, yeah, like that's the penultimate, right? Like that's the pinnacle of information sharing and information synthesis. And so the combination of the sheer size and scope of the technology combined with the mission, and then combined with what I've especially come to discover even since, this amazing community of volunteers who contribute so much so that the rest of us have this incredible resource. And so, what better place to bring all those things together? And so, yeah, it was like work my way through the gauntlet of interviews, and here we are. And it's everything I thought it would be, and then some.
Did you kind of feel like you were uniquely positioned for this role? Like it kind of seems like you're saying that a bunch of the different pieces throughout your career, have kind of led you to this company, to this role, to this organization.
Yeah, there's a lot of brilliant people out there. So to say I'm uniquely positioned, that's I don't know that I would go that far. I mean, I think right timing, right place, and mostly good skill overset. It was interesting, right? Because, a lot of my background was in search and knowledge management and information gathering and dissemination. There's this whole other side to the role, and it was actually a really interesting interview process for me, because there was this whole other part of what we do that I really haven't spent a lot of time on. I'd worked with clients who run large sites, but I had never personally run the ops side of a house. I mean, I know inherently what SREs do, and I know roughly the tools that are used and kind of the day-to-day that goes into things like on-call rotations and all that. But that was, and I was upfront about it. It was like, hey, I feel comfortable on the open source side. I feel comfortable on the search and machine learning and knowledge side, but this operations side of it, that's a piece I'm going to have to learn a lot on. And that actually was part of what excited me as well, is there was this new thing that I could sink my teeth into. And that was a real eye-opener from just a career perspective of being at a position where there's like this whole nother field of technology where I haven't spent a lot of time. And so that's been awesome just to see, especially here at the foundation, like how we do so much with what many people in this field would find surprising, the number of people that actually run the top 5 website that is Wikipedia.
I do want to get into that a little bit about kind of Wikimedia internal, because I agree. I think people would be surprised. And I think, you're talking about, like you said, the top 5 website, and it kind of speaks to the incredible structure that it was built on. And what does innovation look like internally? Like I know this is, I know this, you're new to the job, but being there for the last 6 weeks, are you responsible for the employee experience and empowering those employees to, build tech and to create tech, but also, how to work operationally, or kind of what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like underneath, we as a nonprofit, provide a chunk of the infrastructure that goes into helping service this community. So first and foremost, our job is to provide services out to the rest of this community who can then go and build the knowledge. So a lot of times we talk about it as knowledge infrastructure, right? It's things like search engines and machine learning tools and DevOps pipelines and data pipelines and kind of the plumbing and infrastructure of, if you will, of a knowledge infrastructure, right? And so, ultimately, yeah, I have both strategic technical responsibilities of helping set the long-term vision around technology, as well as, running a 120 or so person engineering team, which has engineers, data scientists, researchers, program managers, scrum masters, kind of all the things that you would expect out of an engineering organization. So it's a mix of technical skills, C-level skills, people management skills at the end of the day.
I want to get into security a little bit for Wikimedia. Obviously, security is changing extremely fast. What does security look like for Wikipedia?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and one that is I'm still evolving to understand on. 5, maybe 10 years back, I think maybe the security team was pretty small. We've grown in and invested in a lot of that. I think for the long time, the foundation has benefited from the good nature of people. But, clearly in the times we're in, those are getting more and more challenging. And so we have to continue to invest to match wits with what's happening, right? So, like any large website, we can be targets. And, people, those bad actors can come from a lot of different ways. And so, we obviously look a lot at the technical aspects of security, but we also dig in a lot on the social aspects. Given the fact that we support a large community of actual people, we take their security and privacy very seriously. We want to make sure that people who want to contribute and can freely contribute. We want to make sure that people who want to read and consume our content can freely do that as well. And so that means, we are constantly evaluating the security and privacy aspects of the platform. I think, we spend a lot of time helping evolve standards there. We're often at the forefront with other people, who are similarly inclined and share our goals around security and privacy, as well as other large websites who, again, are just constantly battling bad actors, whether those are, your average teenage hacker all the way through to, state-sponsored bad actors, et cetera, right? So it's a whole mix of techniques ranging from, like I said, technical to social. And that part's been fascinating to see, and really proud of some of the work that the team's done there on all fronts, again, especially given the size and scope of what we do.
I think all of our listeners really want to know, how do you combat against the people when, somebody on Monday Night Football throws 4 interceptions and somebody changes their Wikipedia page to something to be funny so they can screenshot it and send it out? How are you combating those people? Those are the anarchists in our society.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, those folks are at least doing it in good nature. There's others who aren't so nicely inclined. But, I think this is the beauty of the community. And one thing that I still sit in awe of when I look at what we're trying to help people do. I mean, we look at this as we're deploying tools that help humans be more effective at the things they're doing. So we're obviously, like many security companies and or large internet companies, trying to leverage artificial intelligence techniques like machine learning and natural language processing to understand our content better, to help fight, what you're describing, vandalism, to help fight bad actors. Here again, though, like we take a human in the loop approach, as you might imagine, as a community built off of this incredible crowdsourcing model. Is we look at as how do we help people identify and fix those things as quickly as possible. So I'm constantly amazed at how quickly, those kinds of things get caught and flagged, right? The ones where it's, people swearing or using bad language, those tools are quite effective. Some of the things like you're talking, there's obviously more nuance there, but, those pages are actively watched by a lot of people and things get reverted pretty quickly. It's then how do we enable that to happen more efficiently? How do we make sure we're not burning out the people who care the most about these pages, this data? And so, we look to provide tooling that helps fight the vandals, as well as fight the fatigue that comes from battling the vandals.
I like that they're called vandals because that's what they are. Some people just want to watch the world burn, But no, I mean, in all seriousness though, I think one of the things that is so surprising, I think there's often some scuttlebutt about the nature of discourse on the internet, but it kind of feels like Wikipedia is like the shining example of that so many people are invested in making sure that the truth is out there, making sure that things are correct, taking ownership of those things. Do you kind of feel a sense of like an importance that you kind of need to make sure that you are innovating to make sure you get it right, to be able to see those type of threats? And how do you kind of how have you went into the role thinking about okay, I need to make sure that, this is around, that our technology is staying at the cutting edge for the next 20 years. I'm just curious how you kind of thought through that going into the role.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years is a high bar, but certainly it's a great question. I think one everybody in the foundation and the community takes really seriously. The challenge of disinformation, of vandalism, of that I think we all recognize as a problem, in the information age is a constant battle. 20 years ago, we were all talking about spam. Spam's still a problem, but it's evolved and translated in many ways. These days, I think you see more and more governments involved in this kind of thing. Obviously, journalism has a big part of it. We take that really seriously. I think, you look at some of the tools that we've deployed over the years. I mean, I think we've had means for deploying bots for quite some time in our tech stack, and bot here being what I might call either a lightweight version of some machine learning tools, all the way up through more recently, something that just does like good old fashioned regular expressions or checks for very specific types of edits or checks against things like blacklists and whitelists, et cetera. All the way through to, recently we deployed a tool we called ORS. It stands for Objective Revision Evaluation Service, which is kind of a fancy name for many of the edits on at least the more popular heavily trafficked sites flow through this system and get evaluated for these questions. You can kind of think of it as effectively a classification engine built on machine learning techniques. And we use that tool to then provide the community back with a list of pages that we think have quality issues, that have vandalism issues. And in fact, it's a service that anybody in the community can take advantage of. So we're pretty proud of it. And in fact, even some third parties use it as well to get a better understanding for the state of our content. And so, we're constantly evaluating that. We've been rolling out some recent capabilities. We constantly researching deep learning techniques and some of the newer approaches. As someone who comes from that field, it's really amazing to see all of the rapid growth in things like natural language processing and search and discovery related tools and classification and kind of that, that whole buzzword category of AI. And so, we have a good chunk of staff who are focused on those problems. We also partner with people who, we think share values and who can provide functionality to the community that helps them do their job better. So for instance, we have some tools that help editors in lesser served languages bring in content. Maybe that's not the right way of saying that, but in some of the newer communities where there's maybe not as many contributors, We have tools that help them translate English articles into their target language. But of course, again, that theme reviewed by the community, reviewed by humans who make the final decision. Right. So, we're I would say on the cutting edge of a lot of these things. We've also been investing a lot. The community's been investing a lot in structured data repositories and image data. And, again, those bring a whole host of AI challenges as well. So, we have researchers on staff, for instance, focused on computer vision. We have researchers and data scientists focused on natural language processing, on structured data, kind of all the bits that go into powering what many other people are building on top of us.
Yeah, let's get into data, because for those people who don't know, for listeners who don't know, what is Wikidata? Because this is a really cool thing that I don't know if a lot of people necessarily kind of know the depth and the scope of this project.
Yeah, Ian, that's a great question. And my background and bias is really going to shine through here, because this is an area I really love and gets me really excited about the opportunity going forward. So yeah, Wikidata is a relatively new project, infrastructure for capturing and sharing structured data. And so by that, what I mean is structured data would be like just little snippets of things that say, this person is this. Right? Barack Obama is president. And there's a very, if you study data structures and algorithms, there's some very specific ways of building and storing these kinds of repositories of knowledge. And so you can kind of think of them as just little bite-sized facts. And then so we go out and crowdsource all of those to create this repository. And in fact, then the community has done a really interesting thing in that they're now translating those facts across lots of different languages. And so you can kind of think about it as having this giant map of concepts and facts that are multilingual, right? And so I'm sure your gears are ticking there, because that then unlocks this ability to start to pivot through language, to start to help build cross-language tools. It allows us, I think, to do some really interesting things in the community and downstream, whereby, in many ways I think about it as it's like the connective tissue between other knowledge stores. Right. And because now you can start to automatically link. I could say this article in English Wikipedia is related to this article in German Wikipedia, or over here in our image repository, these pictures are also related because they all share this little pivot, this little piece of data that the community's built and then tagged across these other sources. And if, what gets me really excited about that then is as you look to the future of where, at least in my opinion, where some of this is going, I think there's this real opportunity we have kind of coming full circle back to those disinformation campaigns and other things, is like, how do we help people find and explore the full space of knowledge? How do we help them have a more complete understanding of a particular topic, right? A lot of times our readers are coming in and getting these little snackable pieces of information. And so what if we could then link them to other things, show them the possibility of, hey, you started at this particular fact or this particular article, but here's all the other things that you didn't know about this thing that are related, and kind of take them down the rabbit hole, if you will, to a broader and deeper understanding. That fascinates me because, like, so much of my life and career, like I've thought about those kinds of problems. And again, kind of going back to your question of what gets me excited, that's why I joined, because there's these opportunities to really have that kind of huge impact, I think.
I agree. I mean, I think it is really exciting. And I think it's something that, way in the Wayback Machine of IT Visionaries, I think 140 episodes ago or something like that, 130 episodes ago, we talked with a startup that was helping people with like human resources challenges, with hiring challenges. And we're talking about this idea that, like, where do startups have advantages versus large companies, and kind of the idea of data, where as a startup, you don't have large data sets that you can use because you just don't have enough. Whereas as a big company, you might have a ton of data, but it's not structured in the right way, or you can't necessarily take insights from it. Or maybe you can take some, but not enough. But I think something like Wikidata, and you can kind of expand on this, the idea that the data is under the Creative Commons and that you could leverage this to learn about your business or your customers or the market in a way is really exciting, because it's a great source of data that you wouldn't necessarily have access to, on your own channels. Curious to your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And we have this human in the loop element. It's funny, Ian. I think one of my first jobs out of college, I'm going to date myself here, but back around 1998, 99, I used to work for this tiny natural language processing startup working on what's called cross-language search. The model then was we took this English structured data set that we have that's called WordNet, still exists. And then we had translators from all these different languages come in and translate these concepts, these synonyms, if you will, and related items into their languages. And then we used that as the core of how we pivoted through the languages. So as an English speaker, I could search Japanese by pivoting through this data set. That was 20 some years ago. And we spent a lot of time and effort trying to build a model of that is tiny in comparison to what Wikidata has done in just 5 short years. And so if I think about like what this can unlock for future generations, I know how much we put into that effort way back when, and to then now have this crowdsource model that then can come in and unlock all these next generations of applications. That to me is incredibly exciting, because there's just so many good ideas out there. And I think in many ways, this community and then, of course, the foundation, which helps service that community, is just doing this incredible service for the rest of humanity.
So what would you recommend if you're, a CTO or CIO listening, for ways to engage with, whether it's Wikidata or any of the properties under the foundation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think, at the end of the day, you got to start first with the community and understanding the community and understanding what the community cares about. You can't just kind of come over the top and say, hey, I'm a corporation, I've got a bunch of money I can throw at this problem. I mean, as a foundation, as a community, we know we need money to run the servers, and, of course, donations are welcome. But, it's not something you just kind of can come in heavy-handed on. You've got to work with it. The data is, of course, there for people to go and use. Download it. We provide dumps of the data in a lot of different formats. We even have a cloud services toolkit that people can come in and write their own code, and we'll run it for you. Right? If you want to play around with our databases, our search engine, you want to do some analytics on our data sets, we give out resources for you to do that. In fact, there's a very robust community software development model here, ranging from people giving us contributions via open source to our core pieces like MediaWiki, but then also there's this whole pretty vast bot network. And that was one of the most surprising things coming in here, is we actually, have a whole virtualized environment where people come in and write bots that help them do their jobs. I believe the latest stat I heard is something like 40% of edits on the wikis are done by bots that were written by community members. And that to me is amazing. This ability to crowdsource not just the content, but also the policing of that content, if you will, the enhancement of that content. So there's just this awesome network of developers, of contributors who can come in and help do that. So you can kind of show up as yourself and start just dipping your toe in it. Something like Wikidata, like adding a new entry into Wikidata is almost trivial. Getting involved in some of the Wikipedias, providing some of your expertise is a great way. Like I said, you can kind of go downstream from there. We work with, and the community works with companies who are leveraging these data to build advanced, like home assistants. And I think we've all probably had that experience of asking our favorite home assistant, what's the capital of Minnesota or something along those lines, right? So a lot of that's powered by Wikipedia and Wikidata.
I got to check with producer David to see who wins the bet of when you had mentioned Minnesota in the podcast. I feel like people from Minnesota are extremely proud of being from Minnesota and always mention it. So I love it.
As a content producer, you'll notice I do have a lot of Minnesota Easter eggs in all of my content. Hey, mom and dad, love you. Yeah, no, it is a source of pride. I think it's probably because it's so cold up there that we have to show how tough we are by giving a shout out anytime we can.
I love it. To kind of close some of the Wikimedia Foundation piece, you've mentioned in the past that CTOs have 3 C's to focus on: customers, conferences, and code. How did you kind of look at those when you entered Wikimedia Foundation, and where did that kind of framework come from in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, that was something I think I developed at my prior company. It's actually evolved over the years. I mean, there's a huge people component to this role as well. I think in my early days of talking about this, I kind of just talked about code and perhaps the engineers who developed the code almost synonymously. So these days I would probably add the people side onto that, which of course then leads to the acronym CCCP, which, depending on the listener, that may bring some flashbacks to the 80s and all that. But, at the end of the day, especially in my prior role, I spent a lot of time out on the road talking to customers. As a founder of a company, being the technical co-founder, you spend a lot of time evangelizing, going to conferences, et cetera. For us, you probably could replace customers with community. That still fits nicely into the framework. And like I said, I think the code part of it really has evolved to, the code and the people that go into building that code, right? So, no code gets written without people typing it in and understanding the nuance and the business goals and all of that. And then, conferences, at the end of the day, you got to tell your story. And, a place like this has some really amazing stories, both at the technical end as well as the broader open knowledge side of it. And so conferences is a stand-in for that evangelism side of it, that telling of the story side of it. And that's something I personally enjoy. It's something I had to learn. It was definitely a skill set that as I got better at it, it helped me move up the ladder, if you will. So for any of the listeners out there wondering how do you get to be a CTO, I mean, I think that's a part of it too, is you got to learn how to communicate. You got to learn how to share ideas. You got to learn how to work with folks who aren't always technical and meet them where they are and be willing to take inputs that aren't always based off of, Boolean expressions or like code loops or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the cool things about, Wikimedia Foundation is because it is such a global company and you serve, so many different languages and so many different things. Like that idea of community or customers or the people that you're serving is so huge. And, we have listeners in over, 130 countries that listen to this show. And I think it's just really exciting that you can plug in anywhere from anywhere and get started really quickly to be part of it. And I think, as a CTO who has a responsibility like that, it could potentially feel kind of overwhelming to have, the weight of the world on your shoulders with such a big footprint there. But what a position to be in, to be able to, help developers in this way and have access to stuff that they would never have. And you even have a podcast where you talk about developers and career pathing and all of that. Had to give you a plug for your podcast, Developmentor, which I know you're loath to talk about, but I would love to hear just why you started that.
Yeah, that's a little side project I started a while ago. And I think, to kind of the open of your question, I mean, I will say it's truly humbling at the end of the day, the sheer scope and size of what, started off as this idea by Jimmy Wales to crowdsource knowledge, and I will also say there, and I'll get to your question for sure, but we still have a lot of work to do. And so as your listeners who are in those 130, 140 countries, as you mentioned, think about where you can go contribute to your local Wikipedia or Wikidata, right? Like we're constantly looking for volunteers because they are the lifeblood of what we do. And we spend a lot of time thinking about how do we make sure we deliver knowledge in an equitable way, right? How do we make sure, at the end of the day, the mission is that everyone in the world should have access to the sum of all knowledge, and they should be able to do that freely. That is something, I think about it as just absolutely humbling, absolutely daunting, obviously something you never can complete, but nonetheless, we should try, because I know in my own career, it's been such a difference maker of being fortunate enough to have parents who care, teachers who care, people who care, who are like, hey, Grant, you should learn this. You should spend time on this. You should get educated. And not just in the formal ways, but in the informal ways, the self-taught ways, right? And I think that kind of feeds then into actually answering your question, Ian, which is, I launched this podcast called Developmentor. It was actually inspired by two really critical people in my life. One is my sister and one is my son. My son is a freshman in college, just started. And as he was digging in on it, he was like, hey, Dad, I'm going to go into computer science. And I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I had that little dad pride moment of like, my son's following in my footsteps. But at the same time, like while he's technical, he also has like this art side to him that, I can draw stick figures and that's about it. But he has this creative side. And I was like, well, hey, son, there's this role here in tech called creative director. And he kind of looked at me. My wife looked at me and was like, what are you talking about, creative director? That's not a thing. And I'm like, no, it's a thing. It's part code. It's part art. It's part, like prototyping and design. It kind of fits with who I think you are. I've met a few of them. And he's like, huh. And then we started to look into it. And he's like, yeah, I think that's a fit. And then, so that kind of has helped shape some of his thinking as he's going off into college. And then my sister was a social work major coming out of college, and she's probably going on 20 years now as a product manager and has been in technical product management for 20 years. And she just really highlights to me the fact that, like, so often in technology, it gets presented by the press, by, the powers that be, that, like writing code is the be all end all. And, and I personally have benefited from that. But, there's so much more to building a company, to building technology than just writing code. There's these human factors, there's user experiences, the product managers, the people writing documentation, the salespeople who are selling it, the marketers who are telling the story. And so all of these kind of came together. This is kind of a long-winded answer to me wanting to showcase and highlight those people, right? And really present a much more rounded view of technology than just software engineering, which is the world I came from. And then last but not least, there's just a selfish component of I get to meet some really cool people and interview them and just have them tell their story.
Yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir as a company that makes podcasts to help improve people's lives. So, I mean, I'm right there with you. And I think that, one of the big reasons that we, started the company and a lot of these shows is that so many of these conversations, like here in the Valley, in Silicon Valley, where we're located, where we would have these conversations in the back rooms or in a conference room or at a meetup or something like that with exceptional people that were just in town for the weekend or whatever it is. And I'm like, man, these conversations need to be happening, need to be broadcast so that other people can learn from the cutting edge. So yeah, I'm totally with you. And I feel that, biography is one of the best ways to learn. And there's not that many people can knock out their own biography. So this is one step in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, too, like I see a real opportunity to show people that there's so many different ways and paths. And, tech has a pretty big diversity problem. And, it's something we care a lot about at the foundation and talk a lot about and work hard at. And as I look at both the podcast and the foundation, I'm always in awe of like finding people who can bring different perspective, because they really truly highlight things that are the human experience, and they show all the different ways you can bring people together. And I think, in many ways, Wikipedia and the related wikis also highlight that, right? Is how do we make that more equitable? How do we bring in all the voices to the best of our ability? And, and again, like with both of these, I see a real opportunity to tie these together. So, and then, like I said, there's some just awesome tech underneath all this, and the geek in me just, gets super excited about that stuff too. So,
well, I have to tie this podcast together. We didn't even get into any LucidWorks stuff, so we'll have to bring you back and get some of the origin story on that, and talk more about search and all of that. But in the interest of time, we got to get into the lightning round. So these questions are fast and easy, just like the Salesforce Customer 360 platform, the #1 cloud platform for digital transformation of every experience. You can go to salesforce.com/platform to learn more about the Salesforce Customer 360 platform. Lightning round questions. Grant, are you ready?
I'm like super nervous now, Ian. I mean, that was amazing. So I think so.
#1, what app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
I always hate to admit it, but I'm a Reddit addict. Probably because they were actually tying back to LucidWorks. They were a customer. They are a customer of LucidWorks, and I think ever since then I've been a bit of a Reddit addict. So,
favorite Wikipedia page?
Oh, wow. They're all, like that's like trying to pick a favorite child, right? I love the random page of the day. So that's a total cop-out answer. But there's something every day I learn and pick up just by looking at the page of the day. So I would encourage people, especially on your phone, you get the app, which is what I should have answered for my favorite app. I apologize in advance, but get the app, and that you could take that little bit and then spend hours just like navigating through.
Yeah, I think we all thoroughly enjoyed the Wikipedia binge when you get rolling on you go to one page and then you click through, and an hour and a half later you're like, it's like the scene in The Matrix where Neo's like, I know Kung Fu, He's just got like hours and hours of, you're like, I just went through 4 different grades of grade school just in the past hour and a half.
That's fantastic. I love it.
Favorite thing to cook or eat?
Oh, wow. I tend to be, I really love curries. My wife and I definitely seek out good curry, definitely like sushi as well. So, there's so many good foods out there, but I would probably have to say a good curry.
Best advice for a first-time CTO?
At the end of the day, it's about the people. Everything else will be okay, right? Like really dig in and focus on the people. The code will get worked out. The people, if you're not taking care there to hire good people, to nurture them, to share with them, then why are you doing it, right? And I think many of us who are technical, we often think code and technology first, but it's really about those relationships. And, at the end of the day, like build the kind of place that you want to work at. And I think that starts with the people. It's a lesson I actually had to learn in some ways the hard way, right? I really had to take a step back and think real hard about what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. And then put yourself out there, just, like I said, it'll be okay.
What question do you never get asked that you wish you were asked more often?
Oh, wow. Man, you're killing me here, Ian. These lightning rounds are harder than the other ones. Well, you already commented on Minnesota, so.
Yeah. How about this? What's the best place to visit? What's your weekend getaway? What should I do if I visit Minnesota? I never visited Minnesota, so this would be a first. I've heard it's wonderful.
Well, it's funny. I actually live in North Carolina now, so I'll do props to. I am a Minnesotan forever in my heart, but I live in North Carolina, and my favorite place is up in Asheville, as well as the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Those are probably the two places two of the only places I ever go back to. I love to travel. And I love to see new things. And so again, maybe a little bit of a cop-out, but I very rarely like to go back to the same place, at least for my own personal vacation time.
Grant, that's it. That's all we got. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Any final thoughts? Any things to plug?
Ian, I appreciate it. Love the questions. And, it'd be remiss if I didn't remind people, like, Wikimedia is supported by donors. One of the coolest facts I learned about when joining here was the average donation size is $15. Those banners asking you for $3 here, $5 there, do an amazing job. It's a really critical part of how we raise money. It's unlike many nonprofit, it is a small donor model, large volume of transactions. All geared around having everybody being able to contribute. So I can't stress that enough. I'm in constant awe of all we do. And we have a huge amount of respect for the people who take the time to contribute. So please do contribute.
I did contribute in the past, so I get the emails that like, hey, Ian, remember when you contributed? And I'm like, I'm on it this year. It's great stuff, and I'm happy to be a small, tiny little part of it. Well, we're going to go update your Wikipedia page to say that you've been on IT Visionaries, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ian.
Take care.
IT Visionaries is created by the team at mission.org and brought to you by the Salesforce Customer 360 platform, the #1 cloud platform for digital transformation of every experience. Build connected experience, empower every employee, and deliver continuous innovation with the customer at the center of everything you do. Learn more at salesforce.com/platform.